to be it's so good to be back. Yeah, I know. I've been absent for a little bit. Work, travel, all that stuff gets in the way. But I'm back. You missed me? No need to lie. If you can hear my voice, you know it is that time again for the worst podcast in all of sports. And just like that useless appendage that tends to get infected, bloated, and cause you pain, it's time for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show appendix. In this case, the Too Many Guys Ladies Night appendix, because I am joined by my good friend Chelsea Mike. And Mike, we're going to talk a little bit of women's football this evening.
How about that? Our major tournament this summer is the Ladies Euro.
So 2 major tournaments actually going on at this time. We've got Euro 2022, the Women's Euro 2022 happening over in England right now, and down in Mexico, it is the CONCACAF W Championship. I guess you could call it like the women's version of the Gold Cup, but it's not quite that. This is a tournament to decide to play in for the Women's World Cup next summer in Australia and New Zealand. So, it's actually been a really good couple of days of women's football, like from 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock onward, almost till midnight. There's been women's football on, and the game, some of them have actually been pretty good to watch. They haven't necessarily been close. Yesterday saw Norway beat and well overmatched Northern Ireland team 4-1. The early game in CONCACAF was the U.S. who beat Jamaica 5-0 in a game where the scoreline almost reflects the U.S. women's dominance. And then the late game was a bit of surprise. I did enjoy that one. Haiti, 3-0 over a Mexican team that just fell apart. Today, in Europe, Spain recovered from an early goal to run out 4-1 winners over Sweden. Germany beat a Danish team that were finalists 4 years ago, 4-0. And currently, the early match in the CONCACAF W Championship, I believe it's Costa Rica was up over Trinidad. Yeah, Costa Rica's up over Trinidad 4-0. The late game will be Panama and Canada. If everything holds right now, Canada will have a chance to clinch a much expected berth in the Women's World Cup. They are the defending Olympic gold medalists, so we expect them to be there. But Mike, it's been pretty good so far. We're halfway in, so let's start off with the Euros. We're halfway through the first round of group stage games. We've had groups A and B starting on Wednesday, when England, the hosts, opened up the tournament with a 1-0 victory over Austria. And the next games I mentioned that happened yesterday being Norway beating Northern Ireland, and today was Spain winning and Germany winning. So let's take England. Of the victors, they were the least impressive to me. And they're probably the betting favorites to win this tournament on home soil, much like France was very fancy to win the World Cup. Again, when the tournament was in France, the only issue the French ladies had was that they ran into the U.S. women because of a really bad draw, and that was a quarterfinal match that probably should have, by all rights, have been a final. But the English ladies, bolstered by the Women's Super League, the likes of Chelsea, Man City, Spurs, and Man United, uh, and others, that team has really gotten good. They have a lot of great players on there. Lucy Bronze comes to mind immediately. Lauren Hemp, who plays for Man City, is also a very key player for them, along with I'm trying to bring up my lineup right now, but a lot of good players right there. But they just didn't look like they had quite gotten into tournament form, as though, playing in front of a relatively full house in Old Trafford, and the pressure just kind of made them sluggish. In a lot of ways, they looked exactly like the men's team did when they started their tournament
They did. I mean,
last year.
The similarities are great and they're glaring. I mean, this is a team who, by all rights, should be a easy walkthrough to the knockout stages. And you know what? They completely dominated the game the other day. But if not for a couple of absolutely brilliant Fran Kirby setup touches, Fran Kirby is my girl from Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
And she had two absolutely excellent setup opportunities. The first being the goal, the second being she kind of flipped it over the goalie and they just missed that one. But that was sort of the story for England. It was missed opportunities. It was wide open nets that weren't hit. It was shots that weren't put on target from fairly close ranges. Much like their male counterparts, you're not going to win if you don't score, and you're going to give everybody in England heart attacks if you win every game 1-0, especially these games, which they should be carrying 3-4 now.
So yeah, they they enjoyed 60% of possession, which probably to be expected, right? We thought that Austria would come in, set up a little bit defensively, hope to get them on a counterattack. The stat that stuck out the most to me was they created 15 shots, but they were only actually able to put 5 of those on target. You gotta I understand that not everything that misses is, if it doesn't create a save or hit the goalpost, it's not considered on target. So some of those near misses would not be that we would say, oh, that was just off by an inch or so. To us, might be on target, but to them, it's indicative of a team that was able to create shots, but not necessarily create the type of shots that create danger, put a goaltender in a lot of peril, right? And Austria, for a long part of the game, was able to hang around to the point where it looked late in the game, as we wound down towards injury time, like Austria had a shot. Austria started to get into the ascendancy as England sunk back and just decided, you know what, we're going to pack up. A win is a win is a win. And they were, in my opinion, in danger of giving up a goal and having to settle for an opening draw, which would have belied the control that they had over this game for most of it.
True. And you're right when you said that statistic that England had 60% of the possession. It's almost misleading in the sense that for a period where they were dominating the game, they had the ball all the time, but towards the end they gave up a very good chance, and I think it was like the 77th minute. Mm-hmm. Austria had a genuine scoring opportunity that could have drawn the match. But that's why England have to be better about finishing if they want to go anywhere in this tournament, because you let a team hang around and then you let a team hang around, they draw, you drop points. I mean, and then you're looking at the best in your group that you could do is second, and you do not want to be second in your group in this competition.
Especially not in that group, which I believe would have to play the winner of Group B, which is the group of death.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, their next game comes Monday, 3 p.m. Our time, Eastern Daylight Time. That would be a 8 p.m. local kickoff against Norway, who, that's a perennially competitive team, and they absolutely just rolled over. They absolutely rolled over Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
who, let's be honest, we're happy to be there. They got the goal that they deserve. It was their debut in international competition, and they were just massively overmatched. And oh yeah, by the way, just to make it real fun for England, Ada
Yeah.
Hegerberg, who is back, and the former FIFA Women's Player of the Year, is back playing for an already pretty good Norwegian side. So after a lengthy self-imposed absence in protest of what she can unfair treatment of the women's Norwegian soccer team, so she's back playing for the first time in I think about 5 years for Norway, and so yeah, as much trouble as she created, she didn't actually score, and she's kind of finding her feet still with this team after having been away so long. And an England team that underperformed is going in against a Norwegian team that's coming off of, almost a glorified friendly to warm up. So they're going to be hitting on all cylinders. This could get very, very interesting very, very quickly. And it's a very early test to see, does England have the medal that they need to make it through this tournament?
No, definitely. I mean, Norway, the absolute traditional powerhouse of women's football in Europe. I mean, they were the ones who were menacing the United States back in the old days, and they're
Yeah.
still pretty good. I think their FIFA World Ranking is what, 12.
Mhm.
They're not a pushover team, and they've got talent I've seen in the women's soccer league, in the women's Super League. Um, they have a lot of good players who are on a lot of international teams and who play a lot of minutes for those teams. Now, no, I mean, full credit to Northern Ireland. Actually, Northern Ireland have starters on their team who are not full-time professional players.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you just want to talk about the disparity between both men's and women's soccer, and just the best teams and the lower teams in this draw. Northern Ireland, the lowest ranked FIFA team out of all of them, but full credit to them. They came out and scored a goal. I mean, they didn't get bashed around. They put up a respectable performance. I know 4-1 doesn't sound so, but really it was. But indeed, I think some of the other sides, and we'll get to Group B next, have started to flex their muscles, and England, not so much.
Yeah, like Northern Ireland should be happy just to be there. It is, and I loathe to say it, this is that Hoosiers type of thing where the little team that could, one of those the storybook teams that's able to make it. They were able to get through a relatively tough group in qualifying, only losing twice to even make it. Like you said, they have players who started on their team who are not full-time professional players, which puts them at a disadvantage again in a group where you're playing against Austria, England, and Norway, most, if not all of whom, are going to be players in France, Germany, England, maybe one or two that play in the United States. But they're not even. It's not like we're even dealing with U.S. women's college players, like D1 college players. These are professional players who play day in, day out against, a team that has a few amateurs in there, and they were able to get this far. They scored their goal. I think that this is a good story for Northern Ireland and can go a long ways to bolstering not only the women's soccer team over there, but both. It is, they were able to put both their men and the women into the Euros in consecutive years. Great job to the provincial side of, I think the population of Northern Ireland is less than the population of New York City. So it may even be less than the population of Philadelphia. So for them to be able to get those teams, but like you said, overmatch, it sets up a very good, what we expect to be the battle for the top of this group on Monday in between Norway and England, and in a group, as we've said, that you don't want to come in second, because I believe the winner of this group has to play the winner of the team that finishes second goes into that side of the draw, where they would play the winner of Group B, which is, for all intents and purposes, as you look through this tournament, the group of death.
Spain, I mean,
Germany.
But that's the thing about cups, only 3 matches, and the loser, well, they're playing each other. But anyway, the loser of England, Norway, then now you're behind if it's not a draw. I believe they're playing in Brighton, so it's bound to be a draw. But oh man, I tease Brighton.
But I think that if you're England, the last thing that you want to do is to play for a draw. Because
the England, but both sides, neither of these sides are going to want to be content with a draw. England, especially Norway, because England have Northern Ireland after that match, and then they should have no problem with Northern Ireland. I mean, again, all credit to the valor, but it would be one of those, they'd make a BBC movie about it, right? If Northern Ireland beat England, they'd make a BBC movie about it.
That's exactly
Norway definitely has way more incentive to go for it, and England, they can't sit back. They can't be passive. I mean, they've got to hit the target and convert when they're there.
But that's exactly the reason that you just brought up as to why you don't want to play for a draw, why you want to go out and win, because all it takes is, Joey Geichens in 1950 and a ball to go in, and you drew that one, and you got 4 points. Austria somehow gets to draw and a win against Northern Ireland, and it's goal differential, and your tournament's over at the group stage. Or you're looking at playing one of either Spain, Denmark, or Germany in the second round as the winner of that group. Well, of course you're looking at playing one of them, but you'd rather control your own destiny, so to speak.
Right. No, I mean, look, the attacking threats for Norway are real. Ada Hegerberg plays for Lyon, and Carolyn Graham Hansen plays for Barcelona. Like, they play for the best clubs in Europe, and they've got pedigree. England,
literally the best 2 clubs because they were the ones who faced off in the Women's Champions League. And Lyon, who have perennially been one of the best women's teams in Europe, showed upstart Barcelona, who had gone through a domestic season unbeaten. Yeah, we're going to really show you how this is done, and ended up beating them quite handily.
Yeah, they went completely unbeaten through their domestic season and through the stages of the Champions League, only to run into Lyon, who were like, well, if you want to take the crown, it's a little bit harder than all the other ones. It's like the boss at the end. It's like when you play an old video game and you get to the boss, like you killed all those other guys, but the boss, it's going to take a couple tries.
Yeah. So let's talk about Group B. The group of death, if there is one in this tournament. Spain, Germany, Denmark, and mighty Finland. Um, Finland
Well,
are actually
Finland looked very mighty in the first minute of their game the other day.
Yeah, Finland are not a bad team, and I think in another group we might look at them as being competitive. Spain, based on the performance of Real Madrid and Barcelona, especially Barcelona, were so amongst the heavy favorites, but their star player goes down with an ACL tear on the eve of the tournament, which is really going to hamper them. But they did look good. I mean, Finland got in the first couple of minutes, goes out, gets an early lead, and then you just see Spain and the power, the precision, the almost Barcelona-esque communication. This is basically it's a largely Barcelona squad. It's largely built on Barcelona and their playing style. So I say that to say they have the advantage of so many of their players consistently playing with each other on a team that was so wildly successful this season. Maybe not winning the ultimate crown, but you have to give them credit for going unbeaten, save one game. And they looked every bit the favorites that they were throughout this game, running off 4-1 victors in the end.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Alexia Putellas, how do you replace a Ballon d'Or winner? I mean, you just don't, right? There's nothing else to say about that. But you're right, because most of the Spanish national team is the Barcelona team. And the people, and so it's like 2/3 of the women on it, and that's an exaggeration. But the other third are on the other good team in the league, Real Madrid, who are also not a joke. So I mean, there's oodles and oodles of talent on Spain. I think the Putellas injury, there's two ways injuries usually go, right? One is the team is shocked, they can't believe it, they falter and sort of fade away. But the other way is, the team picks each other up and says, we've got to be better, next man up. It certainly looked like Spain
so you
chose that path.
If we're going to go with men's comparisons from the World Cup, you can either be Brazil after Neymar got hurt and get tanked, or Denmark after Christian Eriksen goes down and just make this pretty amazing run through the tournament.
Exactly. I mean,
and
exactly.
Spain went the Eriksen route.
Right. Well, they seem to have so far. We'll see. I mean,
yeah.
It is an open question as to how good Finland actually are. We'll see. We'll see as it goes through if they had the quality that we sort of thought they were. They're rather high ranked. You would anticipate that they would come in third in the group, but we shall see.
Well, if they were going to come in third in the group, they would have to overcome Denmark, who are themselves a pretty decent team. Like, they were the defeating finalists 4 years ago. The Danes are a pretty decent team, and they really didn't have a whole heck of a lot for Germany today. Their setup, I thought, was a little questionable, going with a 3-4-3, but they set out with intent. A lot of people have talked down about this German side, which, again, one of the regular heavyweights in women's soccer. And a lot of ways they've dominated the Euros for a long time. Maybe not as successful in the Women's World Cup as they would have liked to have been, but they've been a dominant force in Europe, especially over the course of about the last 15 to 20 years. And coming into this tournament, the narrative was, okay, Spain probably the best team in that group. Germany, they're Germany, they're good, don't count them out, but quietly on the low, don't be surprised if Germany grow out at the group stages, because this just isn't that German team. Prior to the tournament, unlike a lot of teams, Denmark, who played 3 friendlies in advance of the team, Germany just stayed mainly in camp. They don't, they didn't play, but they played 1 friendly outside of their camp. It was a 7-0 victory. And that was the only friendly they played. That was the only, match that they played other than scrimmages against themselves. They came out, and again, it was 2-0 at halftime. Probably could have been a little bit more. Some set piece finishing it, and they ended up late. And now they'll go into this game on Tuesday against Spain, which, for my money, is the early must-watch game of this tournament, with the group on the line. And I'm going to be honest, I think that should be a really, really, really entertaining game. You have, just like with the men when Germany plays Spain, you have 2 very contrasting styles. Spain tends to play a little bit more technical, if you will. The German team looked very, very direct. To me, I will say that Spain has, they're really good with the crosses, and they're really, really, really good with the ball in the air. And I think that could cause Germany some problems going forward. But certainly Germany has the strength and depth to keep up with the Spanish team.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Again, both sides, and this might just be the state of the women's games. Most of the players on Spain play in Spain. Most of the players from Germany play in Germany. So if you're not watching those leagues, your exposure to how good these women are is a bit limited. But Germany really impressed me out there today. They won 4-0, but they also hit 5 posts. And yes, maybe maybe Finland shouldn't have played 3 at the back. Yeah, or maybe they should have.
Denmark.
Oh yeah, and maybe Denmark should have played 4 at the back, or switched to 4 at the back at halftime at least. But Germany were, to say they were dominant under describes it. I mean, they were all over the net. They were open in front of net. To me, this game showed me that Germany has a chance to do this, because they looked every bit as good as you would expect them to in their other years.
We say that having seen a Spain team who lost a Ballon d'Or winner, their best player, a England team that was a bit underwhelming. The one team that we haven't seen yet, or the 2 teams that we haven't seen yet, that we have left to see, that I would say were amongst the pre-tournament favorites, and who are the Netherlands, who are the defending champions, and of course France, right? France, right. The French team is always loaded. They are always capable of winning this tournament, and they have remarkable strength and depth in that lineup as well. And so they are yet to play. So I'm not gonna ask for favorites or anything like that based on until we get through till Monday, when we have seen all 16 teams play. But I agree with you. I think Germany came down as they should. They came out, they laid down a marker. They saw what Spain did, and they came out. I was especially impressed with their pressing game. I mean, the first goal comes directly off of the press and a mistake that their pressure was able to force the Danes into trying to play out. They capitalized on it. Basically, they took the ball right off of the defender's foot and put it in the goal. And this after they had hit a couple of crossbars beforehand. They're quite lucky that wasn't a better scoreline. But this sets up Tuesday's game perfectly between Spain and Germany, and that's going to be the one to sit down and watch. So we've talked about the two big games that we've got coming up: Norway, England on Monday, and Spain, Germany on Tuesday. So real quick, how do you see those going?
I mean, I think England and Norway we're going to get a draw, and I'm going to be bold here. I'm going to say Germany. I'm going to say Germany's going to win it. I mean, they showed me they showed me more actually than Spain. I mean, I was amongst the people. Probably I wanted the luster to be off the German rose, but I don't think it is, and I think they're a really hard team, and I wouldn't want to have to play them. So give me England draw, give me Germany win. What say you?
I think it's going to be 2-1 in England, right? And Ada Hegerberger is going to get a goal, but I think the home crowd is going to be enough to pull England over the line, right? I think that the crowd's going to be just enough, because I think it's too early in the tournament for them to have turned on the team yet.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm actually going to go for a 3-3 draw in Spain, Germany.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a late Spain free kick that they're going to whip in one off of a set piece. But I do think that game on Tuesday has all the makings of a classic. So I will definitely be prepped to watch it.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and you're right. Game of the tournament thus far early.
There's been some great group stage games in men's and women's tournaments. I think that this one has the potential to be one of those ones that it has the potential. I'm not promising it, but it has the potential. It really does to have the potential to be one of those games that when we look back at this tournament, we talk about Women's Euro 2022. This will be one of the games that we talk about, much like when I talked about the last World Cup in 2018. We talk about Spain and we talked about Spain and Portugal and the Ronaldo free kick and just how back and forth that was and how bananas a game that was. All right, let's move.
Well, just let me add this, that the thing about the women's game is the unpredictability, and the last two women's Champions League finals, 2 years ago, Chelsea versus Barcelona, and then Barcelona Lyon this year, both look like epic matchups, and both were 3-0 by like the 35th minute. So we've been wrong before, Michael. We have been wrong.
We have been wrong before. I think the thing that made at least this year's championship was not a classic, but I'm going to remember it for the sheer fact that Lyon came in and just really, I think in that case, we did not realize just how good the French league is, just how good Lyon is. And we forgot about their history and looked at this, relative in a lot of ways upstart Barcelona team and thought, oh yeah, look at what they're doing. They're unbeaten. Nobody's touched them, and forgot like, yeah, the French women's league is really, really good and has been the gold standard for a number of years.
Yeah, no, it's it's true. I found it hard to find sympathy for Barcelona because they had just done it to us the year before.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the kind of thing where where you think your team's awesome and then you hit the wall. And that's
Mhm.
Barcelona 2 years ago was the wall, and Leon this year, they were the wall.
All right, let's turn our attention to what's going on more domestically. U.S. women's national team, as we expected, has qualified for the Women's World Cup. Pretty easy win over Haiti in the first game. They just took apart poor Jamaica last night, and they took apart Jamaica with a B team. I don't know all the time if I look at the U.S. anymore and say that they've got the best starting 11 front to back, the best player. Like there were times where I could look at the U.S. starting 11 going into any game, even a World Cup final, and say, there's not a single player there's maybe one player from the opposition that I would sub out for, but we've got the best goalie we've got in the world. I don't think that's the case as much anymore. But the one thing that very few teams in women's soccer can replicate is the depth that the U.S. women have. And that was what was on display last night. That even with making 6 changes from the team that beat a pretty good Haitian team, a lot of the Haitian players play in the aforementioned French Women's League. And that is a pretty decent Haitian team. And if you needed any more evidence, we'll talk about the fact that they beat Mexico 3-0 in the game immediately after.
Yeah, Mexico not doing so well.
Now, Mexico's pretty much done. But Trinity Rodman, who may be the best women's soccer player under the age of 21 right now, is a late substitute on this team and has to play out of position. She's gotten like 2 goals. Byron Robin and I were talking about this, about how she could get the women's transfer record, but she can't actually go to the Women's Super League in England because she hasn't played enough matches. The work visa requirements for a transfer to England, if such a thing existed in between NWSL and the European leagues, and I don't think it does, requires that you have to have played 75% of matches. Trinity Rodman, as good as she is, the highest paid player in the NWSL, can barely get the game for the U.S. women's national team. The question going into this tournament, and she's a great player and her time will come, believe me, I know. The question going into this tournament was not like how much she would play, but whether she would actually make the roster. Alex Morgan comes out with a brace. She doesn't get any game time, rest her, just wholesale changes. The one thing I did think, though, was a couple of things that I saw in this game that were interesting, or in these 2 games that were interesting, was it's weird, Mike. This is not, you expect it, but it's weird when you realize it. And this was one of those times where I realized I was old.
Okay.
No, because all the players that I remember from the team that lost the Olympics in, I believe it was 2012, that heartbreak to Japan, most of them are gone.
Yeah.
I remember Alex Morgan as a young, like, upstart kid going up to Manchester during the London Olympics and putting on a Manchester United jersey, and and now she's considered one of the veterans on that team.
It's almost like how much longer can she possibly have left?
Yeah. So there's so many new, and you see this because, women's soccer tends to operate in a 3-year cycle, right?
Mhm.
Because you've got the women, the odd year with the World Cup, and then immediately followed by the Olympics. And those are basically the two big tournaments. And then it goes dormant for another 3 years.
Right.
I've been keeping track of it, but to see some of these players that are new that I was not as familiar with, they're still great players, but some of the names that I'm used to seeing just aren't there. I understand that Carly Lloyd retired, Julie Ertz is pregnant, the rest of them, but even and Alyssa Nair, who started for the U.S. in the Olympics and the last World Cup, is competing for her job now. That just tells you how many players we have on this team.
Yeah. No, and it's new people, our the our number 9, Mallory Pugh. That
Well,
doesn't
Marilee
seem right.
Pugh wears the number 9, but she does not play
No, I know she
as
doesn't
a.
play 9 exactly.
But which was one of the other things that I was going to get to was the fact that isn't it nice when certain things, when men's and women's teams have something in common? Apparently, there also may be a dearth of strikers on the women's team.
Well, there's Alex Morgan and
Well, I think that Alex Morgan uh, did not start. Ashley Hatch was the designated start. Was the striker for this game, but it seems like she may be the Ashley Hatch and Alex Morgan are like the two pure strikers on this team, right? The rest are all attacking wingers. Late in the game, Ashley Hatch came out and Trinity Rodman came in and was actually playing as striker, which is not her natural position. She's an attacking winger. And the question was, does she have the link up back to the goal play that a experienced striker would have? Look, she got a goal. She's a finisher. She's a natural attacker. She's uber talented. But it's just funny to see, like, again, somebody as talented as Trinity Rodman being asked to play outside of her natural position, but in a position I naturally think that she will grow into. The other thing that I thought was very interesting was, we are used to the U.S. women being like the tallest team out there. They're
mhm.
actually not. Like this time around, one of the comments was from an early set piece was Jamaica's defenders and midfielders were just so much were taller than the U.S. women, so we couldn't put a direct free kick in it. It's not like the days where you had Abby Wambach and you could just say put it on her head and she'll get it in. Like it's
Right.
actually a much it, it's a smaller team from the
Yeah, and
U.S.
I mean like what Lindsey Horan is the new Carly Lloyd. She's considerably smaller. Um,
Mhm.
at least she looks that way. I don't know their height measurements, but she looks smaller. I think, and Rose Lavelle. I mean, Rose Lavelle looks like a strong gust of wind could carry her away. I
Yes.
mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, gone are the days of the bruising Abby Wambach header. That's unfortunate too, because I mean, obviously those teams were so successful, but it's also when you have, it doesn't matter what football team you support, when you have a number 9 who's just the guy who maybe doesn't score all the goals, but like when you need a big header, they're there. That's fun to watch, and
I
having
think
15 wingers is a little bit less.
I think though that um we've gotten to a place where I noticed this back in the Women's World Cup in 2015. Right? They came out, they tried to play with the 4-4-2 and play through Abby Wambach. And the game had just evolved so much that that was not effective. And when they switched to a 4-2-3-1 with Alex Morgan up top and Carly Lloyd playing directly behind her in that number 10 role, that was when they steamrolled Germany and they steamrolled Japan, right? And that was what carried. The header and the cross are a very important part of the game. We do have players we do have some wingers who can put on some. So Sophia Smith had a couple of goals. Ashley Sanchez was absolutely lights out with the crosses that she was putting it in, but it was more about making runs. I think they're looking for more speed and agility to be able to break down teams, because the Achilles heel for many years, the Achilles heel for the US it was okay, sit back and defend them, bunker in, play for a draw, and then do it that way. That was what Sweden did. That was what so many teams have done, is just defend, force them to break you down. And it's hard to say, like, that's one of the toughest things to do. Great teams have trouble doing that. I don't care, male, female, anything. Like, that is one of the toughest things to do in football, is to break down an organized, compact defense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I had actually thought, based on the way that Jamaica had played in their 1-0 win against Mexico, where they had done that, 2 lines of 4, or a line of 5 and a line of 4, with Bunny Shaw playing up top as the outlet. I thought that's what they were going to do. I don't know what it was, whether it was fatigue, game plan. I don't know what happened to make them come out and play the way that they did. They left a lot of space, especially on the right, and they paid a lot of price for it. Had it not been for some wayward finishing and a couple of crossbars and posts hit, that game could have easily been 6 or 7-0.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, bully the United States. They're good for us. We continue to turn out the top level talent, and I think that probably just because of our Title IX situation and the way that we've invested in women's sports for a long time in this country, will probably be very good for a very long time in CONCACAF. I'm a little more nervous when I look over to Europe and even Australia, and I look at those teams, and it's starting to become, where I would see any tournament and just be like, oh, the United States is going to win it. Well, now, I mean, you've got a Spanish team who could very well win this Euro. They looked impressive the other day without their Ballon d'Or winner, Putellas. So, and I mean, England loaded, France loaded. I mean, we ought to be doing well in this hemisphere, but I don't know, man. I look out and
I was concerned, especially with the contract situation, the collective bargaining agreements, the way that the U.S. women's team and NWSL had structured wages, that we were going to lose ground, because more and more players were looking at Europe, and as Man City, as Man United, as these wealthy teams came into the women's game with money to pay, they could attract better players, they could attract better talent, they could create a more competitive league, right? I do believe, though, that this new collective bargaining agreement between USA Soccer and the women's national team is going to be a complete game changer for a variety of reasons. Number one, it ends the subsidies for NWSL players, which means that NWSL players can now sign contracts that are worthy of their play, which is why you are able to see, and it's not much, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say like Trinity Rodman is getting paid. She signed a 4-year, $1 million contract, right? I know how much that is paying her per year, but that goes way beyond what she would have been able to make under the existing pay system. We're going to see teams be able to reward younger players who may not be in the U.S. women's national team setup with contracts like that, which will keep them, which will attract and keep talent in NWSL. The bonus structures and all of that mean that you can actually do pretty well doing this and make and do all right. And I think that was a big game changer, and that may give us a leg up and continue so that a lot of these athletes can continue to play, can continue to see a way that they can play and get compensated appropriately for it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think everything that this team did over the course of the last, decade to get to the point where they are right now is going to be what will solidify the U.S. as possibly the dominant team in women's soccer for at least another generation. And as the sport continues to grow and get more popular and more visible, streaming services, the availability of NWSL games, all of this, I think, is going to continue to be beneficial and keep us on top. I do think that gap is narrowing, but I do still think that we have an advantage. And I think that this new collective bargaining agreement is going to be a big one. But we're going to have to wait a little bit to see just which one of us is right on that one. Right?
Well, I mean, I think that the threat there is yes, you know what, like our clubs are almost an old fashioned, like the English soccer league was in the late early 1900s, right? It's just, teams kind of come in and out and they fail for various reasons, whatever, but they're all small businesses that are owned by people that, at the end of the day, they need to make money for themselves too. I mean, that's the point of being in business. On the other side of the pond, if this Euro tournament is a great success, and they sold out Old Trafford, right? They're going to sell out Wembley for the final. If the clubs like Chelsea were worth $4 billion as recently as a couple months ago, if they see an opportunity in the market to invest incredibly heavy and start to raise wages for European soccer, because I think and even in the United States, I think motherhood is a choice a lot of these women have to make. And it's, making 50 grand. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a mother. That's what I want to do. But if you're making $1 million a year, I mean, that now there's a big incentive to put off life events for it. It's not just women. It's no matter what you're doing. But so, I mean, I think if the women's game keeps growing in Europe, and if this is like a World Cup 94 moment for them, yes, they'll be a generation behind. But again, they're not really a generation behind. They're maybe half. And, in the next 5 to 10 years, I could see us not being as dominant, but I don't think that's bad for the game. I think it's
That
better.
was that was what I was about to say. I think as a American and as a fan of the U.S. women's national team, I want to see them win every tournament, right? I want to see them win everything. I want to see them be competitive. I love the fact that they have gone like over 500 minutes in this CONCACAF W championship without conceding a goal. Like I am there for every minute of us being the best in the world at soccer because when it comes to the men, we are not. It's the one time that I get to put on all my USA soccer gear and go out and cheer. And for just that little bit, I get to understand what it must feel like to be Brazilian or German or something like that, where what it's
Right.
like to be the champions. I don't
Yeah.
get that the other way, right? I do think though that having the US be the most dominant team in the world and beating teams 10-0 is not an overall good look.
No,
It's
no,
not
I
a
think
good
it, especially because the general sense that I get from European views on American soccer is that it's inferior. So if Americans are dominating this, then by that rationale, women's soccer is an inferior product. And I think that uh people are going to see not just through this Euro, but through a continued parity across the Atlantic Ocean, they're going to see just how good women's football can be. And I mean, there's a reason the NWSL has higher ratings than the MLS. I mean, it's good soccer.
It is, and it has been pretty good to watch. So before we go, as good as the US women's national team has been, first let's
They've
give
been
credit
dominant, by the way. Let's not get it twisted. They've been dominant.
they've been dominant. Well, I was going to say that's how bad Mexico was in this tournament, but before we do that, let's give credit to Jamaica and Haiti because they're going to play each other tomorrow. For depending on how the outcome of that game goes, one of them will be in the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, and there's a high likelihood that the other will be in the play-in tournament. Two small Caribbean nations, Jamaica becoming the first Caribbean nation to send a women's team to the World Cup. In the last World Cup, Haiti, we know the problems that part of an island has experienced with natural disasters, legacy of colonialism, corruption, just everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong for Haiti. And for them to be able to have a team, I'll be honest, I think it's Haiti. I just think they are that much better a team than Jamaica is. Jamaica's a little thin. They're missing some players. There's been a lot of funding issues. I think Haiti's just got a better squad. So I would say it's going to be the US and Haiti. And if it is, full credit to Haiti.
Yeah. I mean, full credit to those women.
I think that is, to me, that would be as big a story on the women's side as when Trinidad and Tobago managed to make it to the World Cup with Dwight York and Kenwyne Jones and Shaka Hislop, right? I mean, just this nation, a tiny nation with such limited infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, just the inability to get from one part of the island to another because of the terrain, lack of roads, things like that, make it hard to put together a national soccer team because where do you play? How do you get them in there? How do you find the players? Their coach, their manager has some connections with the French league, has been able to get a lot of the women over there to play where they've gotten better training, better access. They've been able to train and play together, which has made this a more cohesive team rather than a bunch of pretty decent athletes running up and down the pitch, kicking a ball, right? And they look like a team. And they were on Mexico. So I don't know, Mexico has qualified for a number of women's World Cups, and they are not happy. So nice segue into the fact right now that Mexico's got to do pretty much the unthinkable tomorrow. And go out. Yeah, they're at home, but I did to save any thought of qualification, not for the World Cup itself, but for the play-in tournament, to even have a shot to get in, to be one of the 10 teams that goes down and plays with a chance to be part of the World Cup in New Zealand, has to beat the U.S. women's team, by the way, who has not conceded a goal in this tournament in over 500 minutes, by multiple goals, and hope that Haiti just absolutely taunts Jamaica tomorrow.
True. I don't know, like the world could end, dogs could live with cats, it could rain fire, and Mexico could beat the United States by 5-0. That all could happen. But if all of that does happen and Haiti and Jamaica draw, Mexico are still out anyway.
Yeah. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
That's the funny part.
Right. It's literally raining dogs, and Mexico beat the US 5-0, but they're still not even getting in the qualifying tournament.
They're not even in the qualifying tournament. Yeah. So that's where we are with that. All right, buddy. Yeah, it's been good. I don't know if you're watching. We are going to acknowledge the fact that we are recording this on Friday at 8:30 p.m. We are both Philadelphia Union fans, and we both chose to wear our Philadelphia Union kits tonight because they're playing DC United, and they managed to, after having not been able to score for about the last century, score 7 goals. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there to explain the look that we have tonight, even though, because we are talking about women's soccer while wearing MLS kits, but this was not planned. It's just simpatico on the fandom. But my friend, it has been good. We're going to get together later on in the weekend or on Monday to put a wrap on the CONCACAF W Championship, which will be ending on early next week, and the last half of the first round of the Women's Euro 2022. And follow us throughout the tournament as we get together every so often to talk about what's going on. If you have the ability to tune in, it is actually an entertaining tournament to watch, and I'm having a great time doing it. So, for Chelsea Mike, I'm Mike, the host, and this has been the Too Many Soccer Guys show, Women's Ladies Night Appendix. Take care. All right, Mikey, we can just leave. Stead can cut out the last part of this. All right, buddy.
Okay. Yep.
All right, peace. Thanks a lot.